That warm spring morning marked a pivotal point in my life. At just 4 years old, I loved waking up to the scent of my father's pancakes. On Sunday mornings, he would invariably prepare special pancakes for us. He crafted them into shapes like bears, rabbits, and sometimes even my beloved Mickey Mouse, generously topping them with maple syrup and whipped cream. In the kitchen, my mother would be setting the table while humming a tune. I waited on the living room sofa for breakfast to be ready, while clutching my favorite stuffed rabbit. "Lucy," my father's voice echoed from the kitchen. "The pancakes say they want you to flip them, not me. They say they taste better when you do it." Wielding a frying pan, he swung the spatula around like a magic wand. I jumped off the sofa laughing, placed my rabbit down, and rushed to the kitchen. In that moment, everything changed. The spatula fell to the floor with a clatter. My father clutched his chest, his face contorted in pain, and then he collapsed to the floor, my mother's screams filling the air. "Honey, stay with me." What followed is a blur in my memory. The sound of an ambulance siren, my mother breaking down in tears in the sterile white corridor of the hospital, and the image of my father never to return. After his death, my mother was submerged in profound grief. The vibrant and lively woman she once was became shadowed by days filled with tears and sighs. At 4, I had no way to ease her sorrow. All I could do was watch by her side. Yet, scared of leaving her alone, every time she broke down, I could only gently grasp her sleeve with my small hand. The heavy, somber air that hung over our home weighed mercilessly, even on my young self. A year after laughter had vanished from our home, my mother met a man named Wayne at a support group for single parents where he worked. His smile, which reminded me a bit of my father, initially made me feel uneasy. That day, just like my father, he had smiled serenely before collapsing right before my eyes. Every time I remembered my inability to do anything, a tightness gripped my chest. Every time I saw Wayne's smile, I struggled between wanting to believe in him and instinctual caution, troubled by how natural his kindness seemed, as if something might be hidden behind it. However, Wayne truly was a gentle soul. His kindness wasn't forced. It naturally brought comfort to those around him. Initially distant, I gradually opened up to him as I saw how he cared for my fragile mother and worked to bring back smiles to our family. Soon after, my mother and Wayne's relationship quickly progressed, and they got married. Wayne was an ideal stepfather. He showed genuine interest in my education, always attended school events, and even filmed me at sports days, waving through the crowd. "Lucy, the sky's the limit for your future." His words became my confidence. His words were like magic, gently nudging me forward whenever I was afraid to step out. Supported by his words, I slowly gained the courage to try new things. Within a year of their wedding, my mother had big news to share. She was pregnant with Wayne's child. Her face lit up with happiness. "Lucy, you're going to be a big sister," she announced, her voice vibrant with life for the first time in ages. In that moment, though I was speechless, the hope and joy in my mother's eyes made me smile spontaneously. I couldn't imagine what the future would hold with this new life, but the air seemed to warm up softly around us. Resolved to support my mother, I felt, just slightly, that I had grown up a bit. Yet, simultaneously, a hint of anxiety sprouted in my heart. Ted's arrival brought more change than anticipated. At the time, I had just turned 6. Initially, I enjoyed helping take care of the baby. I vividly remember the moment Ted first smiled and the feel of his tiny hand gripping my finger. However, my mother's changes gradually became apparent. First, she quit her job as an elementary school teacher. She said it was because she wanted to spend more time with her family. Whenever someone questioned her decision, that was how my mother responded. "This time is crucial for a child's development." I often wanted to ask her, wasn't my childhood important too? It seemed to me that she was always busy with Ted, and I felt a pang of loneliness and jealousy. My mother's world increasingly revolved around Ted. She forgot my school events. For lunch, she would apologize. "Sorry, Lucy. I had to make a doctor's appointment for Ted today, so I didn't have time to prepare anything." Even dinner conversations centered around Ted. It wasn't a one-time event, it became our new normal. Wayne was the only one who noticed. He saw the lonely expression on my face as I watched my mother engrossed with Ted. Quietly but surely, I faded from my mother's view. One evening, as I was working on my homework alone, Wayne joined me. "Lucy, you see," he asked in a gentle voice, pointing to a math problem. "Sometimes people get so focused on one thing that they can't see other important things around them." As Ted grew older, the issues in our family environment became undeniable. Wayne tried several times to discuss Ted's excessive attachment to my mother, but she always became defensive and angry. One night, when Ted was about 5 years old during dinner, he was playing with his food, arranging it around his plate. My mother sat next to him and softly suggested, "Don't play with your food. How about one more bite?" "Sandra," Wayne said, putting down his fork, "lately you've been too wrapped up in taking care of Ted. He's already 5 years old. He needs to start doing some things on his own." My mother's expression hardened instantly. "What do you mean by that? Are you saying I'm a bad mother?" Her voice trembled. "You're not just Ted's parent. You also have a daughter, Lucy, and a husband, me. Could you please pay a little more attention to Lucy and me as well?" Wayne replied calmly. I pretended to be engrossed in my mashed potatoes while not missing a word of their conversation. "Ted is still so small. A child needs their mother." My mother exclaimed. "I'm still just a grade schooler too," I murmured under my breath, but it seemed like no one heard me. The breaking point in my relationship with my mother came when Wayne suggested enrolling Ted in judo classes. Pretending to do homework on the stairs, I listened to their argument in the kitchen. "Absolutely not." My mother's voice grew shrill. "Do you know how dangerous judo can be? He could sprain his ankle or even break a bone." "It's for Ted's sake, Sandra," Wayne said wearily. "Parents can't protect their children from everything. That's why it's important for them to experience various things and learn." My mother refused to let Ted join judo. Instead, she enrolled him in a city painting class. I still remember those days. While other kids were earnestly trying to paint, Ted just listlessly moved his brush. He quit after only 3 sessions, and my mother blamed the teachers for not recognizing her son's talents. During this time, Wayne spent more time with me, perhaps trying to balance my mother's behavior, or maybe he just felt guilty for seeing me as a child in need of a mother. He took me to karate classes 3 times a week. Every time I earned a new belt, he cheered louder than any other parent. However, as I grew under Wayne's protection, Ted became increasingly unruly. His room was a mess of toys and clothes. One day, my mother looked at me and said, "Lucy, please, could you clean up Ted's room?" I was becoming increasingly resentful of these requests, knowing they were actually commands. Wayne became furious when he found out about this exchange. "Sandra, Lucy is not her brother's maid," he protested. "Ted needs to learn to clean up after himself." That's when my mother played her final card, breaking down in tears. "You prefer your daughter, don't you?" she sobbed. "Why are you so cold to Ted?" I saw Wayne's expression cloud over. I could feel his disappointment in my mother. He looked at me apologetically, then raised his hands in surrender. "All right, have it your way." After that, he stopped arguing with my mother about Ted, but I could feel his affection for me in his gaze. He might have given up discussing Ted's upbringing with my mother, but he hadn't given up on me. It was a small hope, but sometimes a little hope can be a salvation. My high school graduation was bittersweet. Dressed in my cap and gown, I searched for Wayne in the crowd. He was smiling proudly, but my mother was probably texting Ted's babysitter. She must have been too concerned about leaving him with a sitter. She didn't look at me even once. That evening, Wayne called me to his study. "I've been saving for your future," he began, pulling out a folder stuffed with university pamphlets. "Lucy, the possibilities for your future are limitless. Choose your college wisely." Before I could respond, my mother barged in. "I won't allow it. That money should be saved for Ted's future," she screamed. Wayne's face hardened. It was a look I had seen many times during their conflicts. "This is non-negotiable, Sandra. I've already decided. If you can't make your daughter happy, I will," he stated firmly. I ultimately chose a university far from home, but still within a distance that allowed for occasional visits. Wayne helped me move into my apartment on the day of the move. My mother did not come. She said Ted was anxious about me moving out. College life was everything I had dreamed of. Attending college was my chance to escape the shadow of being an unloved child and finally find myself. Though I made sure to call home every week, most of my conversations were with Wayne. My mother was always too busy with Ted, rarely having time for a real talk with me. During that time, I was so caught up in the joys of college life that I didn't notice the dark clouds gathering over our family. It was my sophomore year when I started to notice a change in Wayne. Our weekend calls became shorter, and sometimes he didn't answer the phone at all. At first, I thought he was just busy with work, but the truth was far more serious. One day, my mother called in a panic. She had accidentally found multiple debt collection notices in Wayne's desk drawer. The total was shockingly large, all stemming from debts incurred through gambling. Engrossed in caring for Ted, my mother had been unaware of the situation. When I confronted Wayne, he admitted to having lost a large sum of money gambling. He had started gambling shortly after Ted was born. Initially, it was a way to relieve the stress from his relationship with my mother, starting with small amounts. However, it had escalated into a gambling addiction involving large sums. "Lucy, please do something." My mother's voice trembled. "The interest has grown, and it's become more than we can pay back." I immediately considered taking a break from school, but Wayne vehemently opposed it. "I turned to gambling and caused this mess. I can't let my problems ruin your life. I'll handle it," he sobbed over the phone. Yet, gambling addiction isn't something one can easily solve alone. I thought about what I could do for Wayne, who had supported me since childhood. While continuing my studies, I took on more part-time jobs, began saving money, and cut down on expenses. I also consulted a specialist in gambling addiction, created a recovery plan for Wayne, and got him into a treatment program and a support group. Most importantly, we established a financial management system. Under the guidance of a money management counselor, we implemented a strict budgeting system. I took over the household finances, and Wayne was allowed to have only small amounts of cash on him. Recovering from gambling addiction was by no means easy. Wayne nearly relapsed several times and sometimes seemed to lose hope. However, with the support of our family and his own strong will, he gradually made progress. 2 years later, Wayne was able to completely give up gambling. This experience significantly strengthened our bond. He came to think of me not just as the daughter of his remarried spouse, but as his own daughter. However, the happy days did not last long. One day Wayne fell ill and was rushed to the hospital. The diagnosis was terminal cancer. From then on, our days were filled with uncertainty. His battle with the illness was brief, and we hardly had time to say goodbye. I still remember feeling utterly powerless as I could only watch by his bedside. His condition worsened suddenly, and I wasn't even able to be there for his final moments. Weeks before his death, he held my hand and said, "Lucy, you are my pride. You saved me. Thank you so much." Wayne's death cast a deep shadow over our family. Regret and sorrow welled up in my heart, and despite the passage of time, a vast emptiness remained. Yet, I began to make an effort to move forward. During college, I studied hard in the library during the day and worked nights at a cafe to earn scholarships, desperately maintaining my grades. This effort paid off, and after graduation, I landed a job at a top company. Approximately 2 years after Wayne's death, during my senior year of college, my work experience and achievements at the company were recognized. Gradually, I was able to establish and stabilize my career. By the age of 27, I was able to buy my own apartment. Yet my mother sank into deep sorrow again, her obsession with Ted seemingly growing stronger. Then, several years after Wayne's death, I received news that my grandfather had passed away at my mother's childhood home. During the inheritance proceedings, it was revealed that my grandfather had left a will. Surprisingly, the will stated that all his assets were to be left to Ted. It became clear that my mother had secretly asked my grandfather to write this will before his death, revealing just how wealthy her family was. My grandfather had been one of the leading real estate magnates in the region, possessing immense wealth. He held traditional values, believing that the family estate should be passed on to male descendants. However, as an only daughter, my mother was very much spoiled and favored by him. It was she who had asked him to do this. One day, I received a call from my grandfather's lawyer informing me that my grandfather had made a will leaving everything to Ted. There was nothing left for me. Why? I asked my mother. You're talented and can make it on your own, right? Ted needs a special environment. With this inheritance, his future is secure, she coldly replied. However, the reality was far from what my mother expected. Ted, having been pampered from birth, had no understanding of the value of money. Ted recklessly spent money, making unauthorized credit cards in my mother's name to buy games, high-performance gaming PCs, and computer peripherals, indulging in spending sprees with friends he met at school and in online games. He also ventured into luxury brands, becoming obsessed with assembling flashy clothes and accessories to showcase his status. Eventually, he ventured into real estate investment. With no business or real-life experience, he easily fell prey to fraudulent investment schemes. Targeted by local unscrupulous dealers, he was persuaded to buy high-priced properties, resulting in vacancies in areas with many empty houses and struggling to make monthly repayments, far from making any profit. Within 2 years, the vast inheritance was depleted, and he had accumulated a substantial amount of debt. As friends who could lend a hand became scarce, the days of struggling to repay debts continued, and he increasingly felt isolated. Hearing about Ted's financial troubles due to his wasteful spending, I decided to forge my own path. Then, on a Tuesday evening, I received a call from my mother. When I visited, a woman who looked 20 years older than her actual age stood before me. She had lost her former glamour, appeared tired. The mother I once knew had vanished. Deep wrinkles marked her face, and the traces of once glamorous rings were visible on her thinned arms. After Wayne's death, my mother and brother had moved into the house where my deceased grandfather had lived, supposedly starting a new life. "The house is a bit messy," my mother said, somewhat apologetically. Messy was an understatement. The luxury furniture had perhaps been sold, replaced by cheap substitutes, and old stains were prominent on the walls. A mountain of dirty dishes filled the sink. The house, once known for its immaculate cleanliness, was now on a path of decay. "Mom, what happened?" My mother avoided eye contact as she spoke. "Ted made some mistakes in real estate investment. But there's a new investment opportunity, and if that goes well." I couldn't help but smirk. "Did he get scammed again? What happened to Grandpa's inheritance? Isn't Ted still young? Didn't you stop him?" "He just believed in the potential. It's everyone else who deceived him. It's not our fault." My mother's voice rose in pitch. The usual excuses began. My mother's voice, defending Ted, now sounded hollow to me. As I looked out the window while she made excuses, I could see the light in Ted's room. The flicker of his gaming screen was evident. Finally, my mother got to the point. "Lucy, please, we need your help." Her voice trembled. We'll lose the house if this continues. You're working at a good company now, right? Even just the monthly mortgage." I knew what she wanted to say, but found myself unable to articulate the words I kept starting to say. A part of me felt guilty for not being able to refuse. In the end, without saying much, I set up a monthly transfer of $1,000 to my mother's account, even if it meant cutting into my savings for the future. I kept telling myself it was the right thing to do, yet I sometimes felt like I was giving up on my dreams and hopes. I wondered how long this situation would continue as anxiety welled up within me. But instead of improving, the situation only worsened. The last straw was the appearance of Ted's girlfriend, Ashley. Even after Ted had accrued massive debts, she not only stayed with him but also moved into my parents' house. She drank all the expensive imported wine I had bought, leaving the empty bottles as is. The Tupperware from the supermarket lunchboxes and prepared dishes she bought remained unwashed, scattered around the table and sink. Her arrogant attitude seemed to mock my efforts. Even as I put down groceries I had bought, she wouldn't even look up. She just lay on the only luxury sofa left in the house, continuously scrolling on her smartphone. "I'm paying for you to live here. If you're going to stay, at least help out with the chores." I raised my voice. Ashley was completely indifferent to the fact that the money I sent my mother every month was supporting their lifestyle. Slowly lifting her head, Ashley smirked spitefully. "Well, Lucy, I'm here because Ted, your brother, allows it. After all, this house originally belongs to his grandfather. And why should I do the chores? If they need to be done, you can do them yourself or hire a maid, right? You're the high earner, aren't you?" Her words were the final trigger. Indeed, this house was built on the wealth my grandfather had accumulated, and it was in Ted's name. Since my father died when I was 4, I had been making excuses while trying to earn my mother's love. I supported Wayne's recovery and gave my all to rebuild our family. But what was all my effort for? In the end, to them, I was just a convenient housekeeper who could earn money. I quietly stood up and left the room. Ashley's triumphant laughter echoed down the hallway. During the 4-hour drive from my mother's house to my apartment, I was gripping the steering wheel almost unconsciously. When I arrived at my apartment, sat down on the sofa, and opened the bank's website to make a remittance to my mother, I finally decided what I should do. A month later, as expected, a call came from my mother. "Lucy, what's wrong?" "The money hasn't been transferred." "Yes, I've decided to stop sending money." "What? What did you say?" My mother's voice flipped. "Who do you think raised you to this point?" "Mom?" I interrupted calmly. "What have you ever done for me? Left all of Grandpa's inheritance to Ted. Continued to spoil Ted even as Wayne was trying to rebuild our family. You're just jealous." My mother yelled. "Didn't I tell you Ted needed a special environment? You've grown up just fine without me. You haven't changed. Goodbye, Mom." I said that and hung up the phone, immediately blocking my mother's number. But my mother didn't give up. She sent various messages through Messenger, email, and acquaintances. A cold daughter who tramples on her poor mother's heart. A sister who can't understand her delicate brother's struggles. The excuses, typical of my mother's flair for them, were impressively crafted. 6 months later, my mother and brother, having lost my financial support, struggled to make ends meet and finally had to sell Grandpa's house and move to a smaller apartment. My mother, despite holding a teaching license, couldn't secure a teaching job and was desperately juggling multiple jobs to support the household, but life didn't get any easier. Ted, though he took on part-time jobs, couldn't stick with them and was suffering. His attempts to rely on former friends were futile as those relationships, based largely on money, offered no real trust, and he was often coldly turned down with, "I can't right now." Ashley, who had been Ted's girlfriend, moved out to live alone in a small apartment after they broke up during the sale of Grandpa's house. Unable to forget her previous lifestyle, she continued buying luxury goods, accumulating debt, and her apartment became a mess, leading to a lonely existence as no one visited. Even if they find themselves in a tough situation, I can't reach out to help. I believe it has nothing to do with me. I have my own life and the right to live it. Family ties aren't necessarily defined by blood alone. Sometimes, to protect oneself, it's necessary to create distance. Wayne once said during his recovery from gambling addiction, "Sometimes, people need to hit rock bottom to change." Now, I understand the meaning of those words well. Until Ted and my mother take responsibility for their own lives, there's nothing I can do for them. I continue to walk forward, looking ahead. Their problems are no longer mine. After a long struggle, I have finally found true freedom.